In today's early thoughts video, we're going to take a look at the hottest transfers in FPL right now, as well as look at some news, notes, and my thoughts for Game Week 8 in FPL. So let's waste no time and jump into another Fantasy Premier League video. Just a quick word before we start today's video. If you aren't subscribed to the channel just yet, please do consider dropping a sub. Of course, the goal is 1,000 subs before the end of the season, so any help towards that goal is greatly appreciated. But let's get onto the topic of the hottest transfer in FPL right now, Bryan MBEUMO. Of course, he has been transferred in so far around 216,000 times, which is just incredible, and I can really understand why, especially as an MBEUMO owner myself. You can take a glance sort of at the fixtures at the bottom of the screen there. We will get more into detail them in a second, but 7.5 million, 27% ownership, and of course some great underlying stats as you can see on screen there. Of course, those provided by Fantasy Football Hub as normal, but sort of the fixtures we're looking at here, I wouldn't say there's necessarily a bad fixture there coming up for Brentford and Bryan MBEUMO. Bryan MBEUMO, for me, is a cheap player who's on penalties and has amazing potential to get FPL points. So there's not really an instance where I would make a team without him at the moment, and he isn't going to be moving from my squad anytime soon. I'm sort of seeing little rumours here and there about him potentially moving clubs to a slightly bigger team, which would make sense. You know, he's absolutely just an unbelievable football player, but until we get some more concrete news on that, he will be remaining in my personal FPL team. But it's going to be interesting to see how many people at the end of Game Week 8, at the deadline, have Bryan MBEUMO in their teams. Now, sort of the other side of the coin, the most transferred out player in FPL right now is Luis DIAZ, which I thought was kind of surprising, but when you kind of take into account everything about Luis DIAZ, which we will do in just a second, it almost does just make sense that a lot of people are transferring this guy out. 220,000 people taking Luis DIAZ out already at 8 million, 34.4% ownership in the game. Look, the overall, you know, points to sell Luis DIAZ are quite strong. The fixtures aren't there. You've got Game Week 12, possibly Game Week 10 as well against Brighton. Brighton letting a lot of goals in. So you would maybe say Game Week 10 and Game Week 12 are the real standout fixtures over the next 6. And that's sort of 2 fixtures out of 6 that are standout fixtures for Liverpool themselves. But does that mean Luis DIAZ is going to start every one of these games? I don't think it does. And we kind of seen that, especially in the last fixture when Liverpool played Palace. Gakpo comes and plays for Luis DIAZ. Luis DIAZ plays 17 minutes in that fixture and comes away with 1 point. So there's that minutes risk that we kind of expected to happen with Luis DIAZ and, you know, Diogo Jota as well, with the likes of Nunez, Gakpo, Chiesa, possibly getting some minutes here and there soon as well. So look, it's going to be competitive. In my opinion, Luis DIAZ has been a real standout player for Liverpool, so I do expect him to get a large chunk of minutes going forward, especially under Slot, because Slot really does like Luis DIAZ. And what can I say? He's such a direct, skillful and technical player. He's a joy to watch, but in terms of FPL right now, would I be buying him? Probably not. Would I be selling him? I think I would probably join the 220,000 managers in selling Luis DIAZ if I owned him. There is obviously better, cheaper options in FPL right now on paper. As I've just spoke about, Bryan MBEUMO pops up straight away in my head. So yeah, at 8 million, would I be selling Luis DIAZ? Probably. But if you own Luis DIAZ and you're keeping him, let me know in the comments. What do you think of Luis DIAZ? Are you keeping him for future weeks? Moving on now to a slightly beefier section of the video. It's the notes, news, and my thoughts for Game Week 8. We're taking some notes from last week, some news from the international break, and just sprinkled in some thoughts of my own for Game Week 8. So let's get stuck in with the first point of the Liverpool defence. Of course, we spoke about Liverpool when we spoke about Luis DIAZ just then, but we didn't speak about the Liverpool defence. And again, another clean sheet against Palace. Really great. I'm an owner of Trent myself. I was so pleased that they kept that clean sheet, but there are moments in games where you think they're almost getting lucky, and I suppose it seems that Alisson has a sort of a longer term injury, so we might not see Alisson for a good few weeks. I'm not too sure on the information about Alisson at the moment, but Kelleher is a goalkeeper, a second goalkeeper. He's absolutely fantastic. I absolutely love Kelleher, so yeah, not too much of a worry, but of course that should weaken the Liverpool defence ever so slightly, and of course with the fixtures that they've got coming up, it's not looking too great in terms of fixtures, but I feel as though I might continue to hold Trent just for maybe 1 more or 2 more weeks. We'll sort of see how we go with that. But yeah, something to consider. The Liverpool defence getting another clean sheet. We'll move on now to Forest versus Chelsea. Of course, Forest kept Palmer very quiet in that game. I say very quiet. In terms of FPL points, Palmer only got 1 assist. But Palmer, unbelievable. I'm sure we've all seen that video of that touch in the box where he sort of uses the tip of his toe to put it around a player to set himself up for a shot against Sells. A quick mention about the goalkeepers in that game. Oh my days. Sanchez and Sells pulling off some worldy saves, especially in the final 15 minutes or so in the game. The really important moments, popping up for your team, making important saves, and of course Sells doing a double save against Palmer to get him away from the goal in the last sort of 10 minutes was unbelievable. I kind of expected this to happen. I expected maybe Palmer to get 1 or 2 attacking returns. That happened. Of course, on a different day, Palmer could have came away with an absolute haul like he did against Brighton, but I thought I would take my chances, and that's what I did do. I feel as though if he brought Palmer in sort of that week and expected the same that he did against Brighton, I think you were looking at a sort of a long shot. Forest are a decent defence, and they haven't conceded too many goals this Premier League season. Maybe a defence I wouldn't necessarily look at for clean sheets. They always seem to concede 1 or 2 goals here and there. But, you know, something to consider, something to keep in the back of your mind. If you've ever got a player playing against Forest, maybe it's not the best idea to captain them, just from looking at what's happened with Cole Palmer last week. A transfer that I made myself. I made a transfer of Eze out and Brennan Johnson in. That's who we're going to talk about just now. For me, Johnson looks like the best Spurs midfielder. I think it's a very close second of James Maddison. Is a sort of as data that James Maddison holds, and sort of the passes he tries to make to these sort of players like Solanke, Timo Werner, and Brennan Johnson. They are really impressive, and he could possibly be, very close to Brennan Johnson. But for me, Brennan Johnson is the best Spurs midfielder right now. Of course, got 7 points last game week. There is a slight worry about Brennan Johnson that I do have to mention. There is a potential knock there, especially in the international break. We've seen, sort of an impact for Brendan Johnson, I do believe, and I think all things point to he's fine. I would just hold off for the moment and just assess what happens. Of course, we're still, a good few days away from the deadline, so plenty of time to react to any information. So I'll kind of hold off on that if you are expecting to bring in Brendan Johnson this week. Moving on, though, Erling Haaland blanking yet again. I brought Erling Haaland in 2 weeks ago, and he has scored me a total of 0 attacking returns since I brought him in. And I brought him in from -4. So I am slightly disappointed, but look at the fixture run he's got coming up. You've got to hold him. You've got to hold him. It's Erling Haaland, probably one of the best goal scorers in the world right now, if not the best goal scorer in the world. Of course, the last 2 weeks would say otherwise, but yeah, I think the fixtures are amazing for Haaland. I wouldn't be looking to get rid of him whatsoever, and in fact, I'll be looking to bring him in if possible. Another City player to speak about, Rico Lewis, 90 minutes yet again, and of course we've seen Walker come on a pitch, I believe the 74th, 75th minute if I remember right, and again played at the same time as Kyle Walker, and you could maybe say it didn't work because Fulham, did get another goal towards the end of the game. City just completely switched off for that, which was a real concern. And in terms of, Man City clean sheets, they always seem to concede a goal, and it's sort of a little bit frustrating as a Rico Lewis owner, because Rico Lewis himself is an amazing player. Got an assist last week, which was great. Doku, absolute worldie, just smashed it into the top bins. But yeah, if there was just a little sprinkle of clean sheets in there for Rico Lewis, I think you'd be looking at some great point totals for him going forward, especially with sort of his attack and presence in that City lineup. Fulham giving him a great game, just like Newcastle did, and I think other teams in the Premier League should kind of take what those teams have done against City and kind of deploy that against them, because City did struggle at times, and I believe Fulham actually came out of that game with a higher XG than Manchester City. So, again, something interesting to consider. We'll move on to Bukayo Saka, though, another player with a potential knock. There is a quote that came out, and sort of the end of the quote says, I expect him to be fine. I don't think there's too much to worry about Bukayo Saka. I believe he's been for a scan was it today? I can't remember the exact day, but he's getting a scan or has had a scan on the injury. I expect him to be fine. All things point to him being fine, just like Brendan Johnson just before. I expect him to play in the next fixture. But again, we have to wait and see. We haven't got too much information on the subject right now. And sort of just to end sort of this section off, I want to speak a little bit more in detail about FPL Challenge. Now, I personally barely play this. If I'm ever bored and I just have a quick look, make a team, and then, yeah, whatever. Like you see there, I've played 4 out of the possible 7 game weeks so far. It sometimes feels like FPL sort of slap a challenge on and expect you to just be like, oh yeah, this is amazing, when in reality it's not as fun as the real game. Perhaps if they had weekly prizes of, like, I don't know, like consoles and other things that, you know, the player base would enjoy, maybe you could see an influx of players. But for me, I'm not particularly enjoying it too much. But let's stop saying that. I want to talk about the actual, you know, next few weeks of FPL Challenge and what that means for FPL as a whole. Because game weeks 8 till 11 here, you can see it says Test Lab. Shape the future of Fantasy Premier League by joining us in our experiments, yada, yada, yada. Basically, they're adding points for certain things that players do. Like you can see here, interceptions and tackles are worth 1 point, 3 recoveries are worth 1. Then you move along to playmakers, key passes and crosses worth 2. Foul play, fouls won are worth 2 points, fouls conceded are worth -1 point, and then game week 11 accuracy, shots on target worth 3 points. This could be the future of FPL. Now, I'm not saying these point totals of sort of getting 3 points for a shot on target should be implemented. This is what FPL could look like genuinely next season. And I think if you are to play FPL Challenge, I would play it this week and for the next 4 weeks, just to get a little bit of an idea of what FPL could look like in the future, because it seems that it's going to go in that direction. Of course, we haven't found out any news about the mystery chip that's coming into the game. Perhaps it includes maybe a week where these things are considered in terms of points totals. Who knows? But yeah, the future of FPL could look something like what you're seeing on the screen there for FPL Challenge. I just thought I'd end the video with that there because, yeah, very, very interesting thing that FPL has brought us for FPL Challenge. But yeah, that is my notes, news and thoughts for Game Week 8. To outro every video, I always like to say a big thank you for you guys at home for supporting the FPL Mugs YouTube channel. And if you have enjoyed today's video, please do consider subscribing to the channel for weekly FPL content. And of course, the international break has come to a close. Well, it will be coming to a close with the FPL deadline being on Saturday. So look forward to a lot more content this week about FPL. And do get involved. Drop a comment, drop a like. But yeah, that is everything for today's video. Thank you again so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye for now.